The Cabinet Secretary, Natural Resources Wales are the agency responsible for monitoring the MVZ regulation across Wales. As my colleague Natasha Ashgar said, they are facing huge funding cuts and job losses. Can you confirm today, how do you expect NRW to continue the monitoring of MVZs with the huge pressure that the Welsh Government is putting on them with funding cuts? They can only do so much. This Government is asking them to do more, and if you're asking them to do more, you've got to put the money up front to make them be able to do it, because officers not there are not going to be able to deliver what this Government wants.
I think we can, again, reflect on the answer I gave to your colleague Natasha Ashgar. NRW, this is not new for the pressure that NRW are under. They've had several years of having to focus back on what they are required to do in terms of environmental protection and flood protection and their other statutory and regulatory duties, including on agricultural pollution, including on river quality and all of those aspects. And that is the exercise that they've been involved with some time, and the current discussions that they're having internally is again on how they can focus on those duties, discharge those duties properly, do it in a proper risk-based analysis as well. They realise that they're not immune as a public body or an arm's-length body from the financial pressures that reach right across, not only here, but also the Environment Agency in England and elsewhere as well. But I give credit, I have to say, to the officers within NRW who do sterling work. I have asked them on occasion during my tenure here to work with us and to work with the farming community to make sure that they can work in a way that is empathetic to the challenges that farmers are facing, and they've done so. So I think I have confidence that in NRW that they will do their very best to discharge their duties going forward.
I'm sure they will, but the number of job losses is colossal. They've got to look at agricultural pollution, water quality, forestry, flooding. That's just to name a few things that they do. So it'll be interesting to see how they do manage that. But, Cabinet Secretary, the control of agricultural pollution regulations in Wales included a closed period of the spreading of slurry, which does aim to reduce nutrient pollution in watercourses. However, unforeseen circumstances such as weather-related challenges, disease outbreaks can lead to full slurry stores. That poses a significant risk to farmers being able to comply with the rules that this government's put on them. Additionally, obtaining planning permission for slurry stores is a huge problem across Wales. So, given those challenges, Cabinet Secretary, what action should farmers take to ensure that compliance within the closed period is adhered to and to stop those mitigating risks to their businesses? And one thing I'm hearing, Cabinet Secretary, is who should farmers contact to discuss the issues they're having? Because NRW are telling people to contact the Welsh Government. Welsh Government are telling people to contact NRW. And in between all that, they're telling people to contact their local authorities. You can understand why this is confusing for the Agricultural Secretary. So could you please shed a light today? Who are farmers supposed to contact?
Yes, and they're meant to contact NRW. If the issue that they have to deal with is with NRW, it's NRW. So, James, it would help very much if you could clarify to farmers who are contacting you that that is the right course of action. But certainly not Welsh Government. We are not out, even though I have a set of wellies that I work with on farms, I'm not out there every day dealing with every farm across the whole of Wales. NRW are doing that, and they're doing it despite the financial challenges. But could I just say to you, the regulations that we have provide a minimal level of slurry storage to help prevent agricultural pollution. And the issues being faced by farmers currently actually highlight the importance of good manure management in preventing pollution. The guidance that accompanies the regulations makes it clear that additional storage may be needed to comply with the requirements of the regulations. Now, the amount of storage needed will be highly dependent on the individual farming practice, on that individual farm business. Hence, the regulations do not unnecessarily burden farms which may be able to operate with a lower level of storage, the statutory minimum. Now, we do know some farms have indeed faced difficulties, and I've been discussing this with the farming unions and with others, and they face difficulties with planning, with local planning authorities, having advised me that planning is usually taking around 10 to 18 weeks. So a transitional period of 174 weeks was provided, 174 weeks, in relation to slurry storage and the close periods, meaning most farms will have, with the right planning, have had sufficient time to adapt and to plan through this. However, I do recognise the difficulties farms have faced since the regulations were introduced, including the impact of global events on materials and costs and the need for time to access financial support to achieve compliance. So I have, in consultation with NRW, considered the enforcement approach in these circumstances. We've identified some changes to the Welsh Government cross-compliance verifiable standards, which will take these matters into account, and they'll be published at the end of this month. Breaches of the slurry storage requirements, the close periods and the restrictions which apply following the close periods will be reduced where the breach is identified before the 1st of August 2025. This will only be the case where the pre-existing regulatory storage capacity is met and evidence of having taken reasonable steps to achieve compliance is available. And as with James, all cross-compliance requirements, any exceptional circumstances which may prevent compliance would be considered on a case-by-case basis. But Llywydd, I repeat my very strong advice that any farm should contact NRW at the earliest opportunity to take advice where there is a risk, especially where there is a risk that the slurry store will fill beyond the freeboard, because when the freeboard is breached, it can risk catastrophic failure of the store, placing the farmer and others at significant risk.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. With the detail you've just outlined, I think it would be very useful for this chamber if we could actually have an update from you and a statement on the changes that you've made rather than announcing them today. If we could have that statement from you in the future, I think that would be very, very useful. One thing which you failed to mention was the regulatory impact assessment for the MVZs estimated a significant upfront financial cost to farmers to build slurry stores. About 360 million it was average for MVZ compliance across Wales, and the Welsh Government only committed £20 million towards that. So it's this government, again, bringing in regulation, but actually not putting the full amount of money there to enable our farmers to actually meet the regulations which you put forward. So given those financial burdens that are placed on our farmers, how will this Welsh Government ensure that farmers have that additional funding that they require to meet your requirements, to build the slurry stores, to get them through the planning stage, which also can be very costly when you've got to put all the different regulations and get everything signed off in time? So it'd be very interesting to know, what are you doing to actually top up that 20 million to make sure people do it? Because if you don't put more money on the table, farmers will go out of business, and what we're going to see is loads of farmers across Wales not complying with this regulation. That's not something I want to see, because I don't want to see farmers getting fined across Wales for doing something which you've imposed on them.
Well, let's be absolutely clear that the recent £20 million, which was part indeed of the agreement that came through the cooperation agreement, which I very much welcome bringing forward that announcement of £20 million. It wasn't a stand-alone. It actually brings our total offer to £52 million to support on-farm infrastructure investment since the regulations were introduced. I'll just repeat that, £52 million that have gone into this. Now, we'll be stretched on the budget, but we found the additional £20 million. We will look in the future going forward as well what can be done, but I know the stretch that my colleague, the Finance Secretary, will be under, and the pushback that he'll be pushing to all of us to say, how do we balance the books here? But just to say, in the most recent announcement, I made the appeal to farming unions and to the wider farming community. Please, please, please put in your applications, because not always have we seen farmers take up the money that's been put on the table. This time there is. Over 800 farmers have applied for that funding. We'll be signing off the vast majority very soon, as long as the business plans, cases are in place and so on. We've also, by the way, made additional grant awards to the value of 1.6 million under the yard covering scheme as well. We've also invested in the nutrient management investment scheme with over 900 farmers. So this is far from being one single £20 million investment. We've put our money where our mouth is, but we do want to actually say to farmers, step up, plan for this, work through the difficulties that there are with planning, the difficulties that there are with the weather and so on. I'm very aware of them. I've been out speaking to farmers relentlessly on this issue, listening to them and trying to adjust the way we're going forward. But there is a deal on the table here that says we need farmers then to step up to the mark and work through this and go for it. Grab the money, work through the planning and put these in place.